So, first I want to welcome everyone to our very last professional development day of the school year. And thank you to those who are joining virtually, including our NV EPIC PPP and AARL students, as well as our UNR NIPER fellows. We are super excited to have you all with us streaming, and we hope that you enjoy this fabulous day of events that we have for you today. So I am going to hope that I can work this. There we go. Welcome. Don't laugh at me. I've been working on that all day. So, things we have going on. We are going to, come on in. Just come on in and fill a seat, it's fine. No problems whatsoever. So, again, it is our distinct pleasure to have another nationally renowned speaker with us today. We have Dr. Laura Rendón. She is a student advocate, a scholar, and an educator. She's also a fierce supporter of low-income and first-generation students. She is a professor emerita at the University of Texas San Antonio and has a scholarship named after her at Arizona State University in honor of her leadership, character, and academic excellence that is put on by the Latinx and Chicana faculty and staff there at Arizona State University, which I think is a testament to just how committed she is to learning and students. Today, she's going to talk with us about the idea of Sentipensante. Before she comes on, I just want to remind you all, we are going to do our red, yellow, greens. So as she's talking, you're going to just kind of go in, and she's got all sorts of great information. I ask that you use this as a place to keep up with things, ideas, take notes. The information that she has, the insights that she has are quite transformational if you take the time to listen to it and really process what she's saying. So I ask that you are taking notes, that you're engaged with it. Go back and look through your book later and figure out not just how it impacts you as a teacher, how it impacts you as a student, and kind of bringing these ideas with you as we carry on and continue through today. So I'm sorry, I went too fast. I saw the disappointed look on people's faces. It is my absolute distinct pleasure to bring in our last keynote speaker of this year's professional development series, Dr. Laura Rendón.
Thank you so much.
This is your cookie, and I'm going to put you up in. We're going to switch over to her presentation.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Buenos dias. Buenos dias. A bilingual crowd. I love it. So great to be with all of you today on the last PD day. Okay, somehow this isn't moving. It's the down one. Oh, it's a down one. Okay. All right. I have never been to this part of Nevada before, so this is nice to experience something else besides Las Vegas, where I'm staying at, and I already lost $50, but you know, it's not too bad. I think I'm going to put a stop at that. At any rate, I want to begin by sharing a little bit about how I come into this work that I'm going to speak to you about today. You see a photo there, that was in the 50s, and that's me in the middle. It's my 6th birthday. And I wanted nothing more than a pair of moccasins for my 6th birthday. And my mom, she was a waitress. She cleaned motel rooms. She picked cotton. She did all kinds of things to help the family survive. So she somehow found the money to buy these moccasins. And I'm there, and on my right is my little sister, Ileana, who went on to be a teacher in high school, an English teacher. And on my left is my little cousin, Elma, who went on to be a social worker. So I was born along the US-Mexico border in Laredo, Texas. Any of you heard of Laredo? Yeah? So right on the Rio Grande. One side Mexico, the other side Texas. And we spent a lot of time moving around when I was a kid because my mother was always trying to find places where we could be close to school. So you see in the back the house where we used to live. Not a very nice house. It's not even painted. And so poverty does something to you. It means that you don't have the best health care. It means you don't have the best nutrition. It means that you're always struggling to find the money to survive. And so that was my experience growing up. And my journey from the barrio of Laredo, Texas, all the way to the University of Michigan, where I earned a doctorate, has been nothing short of extraordinary. This kid wasn't supposed to get anywhere. No one encouraged me to go to college. In fact, when I was in high school, the sponsor of the Future Teachers of America told me that I would never be a teacher because I made an F in chemistry. And she didn't ask why I had made that F. She called me into her office and she said, "Teachers don't make Fs." The reason I had made the F is because I had gone with my mom to Nuevo Laredo. It was raining, and we were running to get away from the rain, and I sprained my knee so badly, it got really, really swollen. I struggle with it as we speak, and we didn't have money to see the doctor. So I stayed at home for about 2 weeks, and when I got to my chemistry class, the teacher had a test. I failed the test. I got an F in chemistry. So that comment from that teacher went straight to my heart, and I was like so depressed that day. But somehow I found the courage to keep going. That teacher could have derailed my whole career. I wouldn't be standing here today if I had listened to her. And I wish that she could see me now, where I became not just a teacher, but a university professor. So that is the power that you have as teachers. You have the power to take students like me, who grow up with nothing, and help them to move farther along, even further than they think they can get. And so that's the story of how I come to this discussion about helping students who grow up in poverty, low-income areas, who are often the first to even think about going to college. There are many odds working against students like me. We have societal factors, for example, school funding inequalities. Not all schools are funded the same because of the tax base. So the students who grow up, for example, in Beverly Hills are going to get one kind of school. Students who grow up in a low-income area are going to get another kind of school. So the playing field is not equal at all. Then there's a lot of segregation going on right now, both in schools and in colleges and universities, with African American kids going to schools, primarily with the majority of African American kids, Latinx students, the same thing. So there's lots of segregation. Students are still struggling to survive. We saw this highlighted during the pandemic. Remember the food lines. Remember the checks that people got because we were all struggling to survive. And what the pandemic did is highlight what was already there. These kinds of things were already happening. The pandemic just exacerbated the whole situation. So there's still a lot of poverty in America. There's a lot of wealth inequality with the top 1% earning more than probably everybody else combined. I cannot understand the wealth that Bill Gates has or Jeff Bezos any more than they can understand the poverty that so many Americans are going through today. And then when we come to schools and colleges, there are factors going in there as well. The lack of faculty and staff of color, so that students can see themselves represented in schools and colleges. Deficit views about students, which still exist, especially for low-income students, with many educators and policymakers believing that these students don't have anything going for them, that their parents don't care about education, that it's not worth it to spend time with these students, that they're not going to go anywhere. These are all deficit-minded approaches that we need to shatter and replace with asset-based views. And I'll talk more about that today. And then the need for a more humanized approach to work with racially minoritized students. So I'm going to take you through a number of equity points. And the first one is that as teachers, as educators, we need to understand the experiences of low-income first-generation students. Many of your students are going to go on to college, and these are some of the things that they're going to experience that you need to be aware of and perhaps help them in schools. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a study that we did at UTSA where we interviewed Latinx students and wanted to find out what the college experience was like for them. So this chart pretty much depicts what we learned. Students live in multiple worlds. This is their personal world, the world of family, the world of their friends, the world of work, their spiritual world, their barrio and community, and their native country. Many of these students coming in from Mexico, from Bolivia, from Puerto Rico, etc. So these are the worlds that they're familiar with. As they move from here to the college world, they experience what Gorena Saldúa calls un choque, a cultural collision. So that there's dislocation from these worlds and relocation going on now in this new, unfamiliar world of college. Oftentimes, students do not get help to understand this new world of college that is very different from these worlds over here. We're talking about college having a new language, new people, new perspectives, new traditions. And somehow students need to figure this out, and they don't have anyone in their family to ask for help. I had nobody to ask for help. My parents only went to the 3rd or 4th grade. So they had no idea about what college was about. Affluent students do. Their parents have typically gone to college, or somebody in the family has typically gone to college, or they understand college and support it. So the challenges in college include things like separation anxiety, really feeling sad about leaving their friends behind, leaving their family behind. We talked to students who sometimes the young man had taken on the role of the father when the father left, or the young lady had taken on the role of taking care of her brothers and sisters, and they felt sad about leaving the family behind. Microaggressions exist in many colleges and universities even today. These are small jabs, kind of insults that students hear. For example, what's that food you're eating? It smells terrible. Why do you have an accent? How come you're speaking to your dad in Spanish? These are microaggressions, okay? Then we've got college readiness. Maybe they did well in high school, but now in college, not so well. Advising issues, being placed in the wrong program of study. College affordability, not having enough money. That is a big, big factor. It was a factor for me. I always had to send money home. Even getting financial aid, I sent money home because I knew that my mom needed the money. To this day, I send money home. And so I never kept all of the financial aid package for myself. Liminality, a fancy word meaning being in an in-between space. One foot in the worlds that they recognize and another foot in this brand new world of college. Unfortunately, many educators do not understand these dynamics very well. They think that everybody is starting at the same starting line, and they are not. So it's very important that in high school and middle school, we begin to educate students about what they're about to face as they make the decision to go to college. Whatever, it's community college, four-year college or university, whatever that may be, educators need to understand these dynamics. So here's a student talking about living in these multiple worlds. I'm not sure how to play the video here. Can someone help me a little bit with this? What do I do to play this video?
College is different, very different. I see it as I have my
Can you raise
college
the
life
volume
and
a
I have
little
my
bit?
personal life. Is when I'm at school, I'm like in school motion. I know how to speak to people about courses and how to do projects and what I plan to do for the future. I want to go to graduate school. I want to do this and that. When I'm with my parents, there's no school talk other than how you doing and how long it's going to take for you to graduate. It's they just I don't think they fully understand what I actually do at school. All they see is that I'm going to school and I've been married, I don't have any kids. How long is that going to take? That's pretty much what I'm gaining from my parents. And I just think they just don't know. So it's like two different worlds. I live in multiple worlds.
Were you able to hear that back there? You were? Okay, all right. I just want to make sure, because to me it needs to be a little bit louder. Oh, they're fixing it. All right, so understanding the experience of college for students, their educational experience as they move from their worlds to the new world of college is important. The second thing that we need to understand is the importance of humanizing education through what I call validating relationships. So let me say a little bit more about that. Relationships are super, super important in education and in life. There's a new book out. It's called The Good Life. See it at this point right here. And it's the longest study of human life ever done. And what the researchers did, this is a Harvard study, is they followed adults for many years. And the key thing that they found out was that the most important thing that we can do to ensure health and happiness is to cultivate warm relationships with others. That is the key to health and happiness, having relationships. And so they found out that there were certain groups of people that had better relationships than others. And so one of those groups is the Latinx community, because we have a lot of fiestas, baptisms, y que aquí, allá, there's always a party going on. So we know how to do relationships, really well, and that's good. And other groups have relationships as well, but for some reason, inside the classroom, sometimes these relationships don't work out as well. So what I did in the 90s is I created something called validation theory. The theory comes out of interviews that I did with students, and I asked them, why are you still in college when others have dropped out? And they talked to me about when someone inside or outside of college reached out to them and made them believe that they could be successful college students, that they could do this, that they could do science, that they could be successful, that they had what it takes to be successful in school and college. These are validating agents. They were coaches, they were tutors, they were teachers, they were parents. All of these individuals coming in to really communicate to the students that they cared about them and that they could be successful. You can do this. You can do science. You can be successful in college. This is all about creating these kinds of validating relationships. And so there are many ways to do validation. One is interpersonal, and here are some examples of interpersonal relationships. When we reach out in a personal way to show that we care about the student, to work with care and compassion, reaching out in a humanized way with students. Asking, for example, how are you doing? A smile, a head nod, a wave of a hand, a hug, a compliment, a note, or a letter. One of my colleagues from UCLA, Danny Solorzano, and his other colleagues wrote an article where they talk about something called micro-affirmations. And what Solorzano writes about is that he read the memoir of Henry Louis Gates, who's a scholar at Harvard. Henry Louis Gates is an African-American scholar, well known. He has a PBS show where he does genealogy. You might have watched that. And he writes in his autobiography how when he was in Italy, he was at a cafe with his daughter. And other African-Americans would pass by, and he would always smile and nod at them. Didn't know them, but would do that. And his daughter asked, "Dad, how come you smile and reach out to these individuals? You don't even know them." And he said, "It's important to be seen when you feel nobody sees you. It's important to be seen when you feel nobody sees you." And so during the pandemic, I hope that we learned one thing, and that is how much we need each other. We found ways to communicate with others when we couldn't go anywhere. There was nowhere to go. Everything was closed. And so remember the drive-by birthday parties, yeah? Or the drive-by graduations, or the happy hours. How many of you did happy hours? Yeah, there you go. Weddings. I did a wedding online. I even had my champagne there and everything. We got really creative about forming relationships with others because we needed each other. We missed that human contact. And we need to remember that this is important for our students as well, in schools as well as in colleges. So doing these kinds of things can go a long way. Simply asking, "How are you doing?" can go a long way. So here are some validating statements. You have what it takes to do science. There's a faculty member in San Diego who said, sometimes I meet with students and I say to them, "Do you know that it makes my day to see you? Yeah, it makes my day. I'm so happy you're here." That's a tremendous validating statement. Your writing has definitely improved. You're going to be a great writer. Telling that to a student who is afraid of writing, who is intimidated of writing, can go a long way. That's academic validation. I know how difficult things are right now. Are you okay? How are you feeling? What are your challenges? How can I help you? What would you like to study? What has meaning for you? And so these are some examples of validating statements that come from us, directed at students. And then over here, you see examples of validating school and college cultures, ensuring that their cultures are represented in the curriculum, ensuring that they're represented in the composition of faculty, counselors, and administrators, that the climate fosters a sense of belonging, that speakers and events reflect the student culture, and on and on. These are just some examples of what I mean by validation. So, how many of you know Lizzo? Lizzo? Yes? Yeah. Well, what does Lizzo have to do with validation? Actually, I saw this clip that I'm about to show you on TV, and I thought, oh my God, she's talking about validation. When Lizzo is asked, who is the most important person in your life who helped you be who you are today? And Lizzo is a multimillionaire, Grammy Award-winning artist, phenomenal flutist. She was in the band in Houston, right? And the person that she always names is her band director, Manny Gonzalez. And so I want to show you a clip of Lizzo meeting Manny Gonzalez, her validating agent.
We brought him back.
How you doing?
Oh my God, I'm so good. Oh my God.
I'm very proud of you.
Thank you.
You've been doing good.
Wow, I did it tonight. You told my ass, you were like, get it together, girl, because you are special. Apply yourself. Those moments meant so much to me. Hi. He was like,
So there you see the impact of the validating agent on Lizzo. And so that happened a long time ago when Lizzo was in middle school. You know, she's way beyond that. But she remembers Manny Gonzalez. And that's the impact of validation, that this may have happened years and years ago. But it's so impactful that you will remember it for the rest of your life. That's the kind of validating agent all of us can be with our students. It's about really saying to students, you can do this. Get it together, girl. You can do this, okay? And she did it, and she did it big time. So moving on then to working with an asset-based framework, which is also very, very important. Remember those negative things that I talked to you about earlier, those invalidating comments about students and families, you know, believing that they don't care about education, that low-income students are not college material, et cetera. One of the things that I've learned through our studies, our research, is that students have assets. They have strengths that are typically not well understood by many educators. And when we talk to students, we realize that one of the assets has to do with their aspirations, their ability to set goals and to remain hopeful about the future. I remember talking to a young man, his name is Uriel, and he and his brother wanted to be politicians. And they admired the Castro brothers in San Antonio, Joaquin and Julian, who spend a lot of time in Washington. In fact, Julian ran for president a couple of years ago. And so that was they're also twins, just like the Castro brothers. And that's what they wanted to do, just be like the Castro brothers, be like those twins. Giving back. This is a phenomenal strength that students have. They wanted to earn a college education, a college degree, not just to hang it on the wall. I mean, that's nice. But more importantly, they wanted to use their education to help their communities, to be role models for their brothers and sisters, to make this world a better place to live. That is tremendous spiritual nobility as far as I'm concerned, that these students had it within themselves to share what they learned, to help others. And that, in essence, is the reason that I do my work. All of my work is dedicated to help low-income first-generation students have a shot in American life, to be as successful as they can be. That has been my passion. That is the way that I give back in terms of my education and how I use it to help others. They resisted poverty. They confronted and challenged racism, sexism, and homophobia. They had navigational competence. They figured things out. Many of them came from another country, and to learn the new American culture, the new language, the new traditions, is tough. But they were able to work that through. They learned how to figure college out as well. Navigational competence. And then they had what Jaime Escalante, in the film Stand and Deliver. It's an old film, but I really recommend that all of you see it. How many of you have seen Stand and Deliver? Oh my God, okay, you got a lot of fans here. And what does Jaime Escalante say you have to succeed in science? Ganas, ganas. You got to really, really want this. You can't just get in there and say, oh, I want to be a scientist. No, 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 no. You have to really, really want to do this because it's going to take a lot of sacrifice to get through science and mathematics. So they had that perseverance. They really wanted to get going and get their college degree. So these are assets that students have. The next equity point is the importance of teaching and learning. And not just any teaching and learning. We're talking about a teaching and learning approach that is humanistic, that is holistic, addressing the whole child, the whole student, intellectual, social, emotional, social, and inner life skill development. We're talking about a teaching and learning process that is equity and justice based, that is culturally validating, and that is experiential. By experiential, I mean that students, they want to learn the content, but they want to know, how do I apply this in real life? What are the applications of what I'm learning in real life? So I want to give you some examples of the reasons that we need to rethink teaching and learning today. To me, it's not just about learning facts and figures. It's not just about learning content. We now have to train our students to address social problems. These are some examples of issues, challenges, problems that have confronted American society and indeed the world. We haven't solved these problems. We haven't solved the problem of systemic racism. We haven't completely solved issues related to virus outbreaks. There's another one coming. It's a matter of when. We have not solved the problem of gun violence. And I feel for you because you're in those classrooms. We haven't solved that problem. We haven't solved the problem of family separation and immigration, terrorism. We've got the war in Ukraine, climate change, etc. I would like to see an education where we help students get educated to the point that they're going to help us to come up with real solutions for these kinds of issues. And an education that focuses solely on content is not going to cut it for me. We need a more spacious view of education. And I'm going to give you some examples of what I mean. We need our students to be super smart. Don't get me wrong. I want them to learn the content. I want them to pass all those tests. But I also want them to be good human beings. I want them to be bridge builders. I want them to bring us together, not separate us. I want them to think before they start a war. I want them to be the most phenomenal leaders in the world. And so to do that, we've got to focus on competencies such as having self-knowledge, pluriversality, thinking beyond either or, I have to do this or that, what about the third way or the fourth way? Having students know how to build community, having a critical consciousness, being empathetic, being compassionate, appreciating and working with diversity, taking care of themselves, having a sense of connectedness, a sense of presence, a sense of meaning and purpose. These are just some examples of the new competencies that we need to include in addition to learning the content. We have to have a more spacious view of what it means to be educated in the world today. Everything changed for us nearly 3 years ago. The world is not what it used to be. It is much more complex. It is much more chaotic. It is much more uncertain. And this is the world that our kids are getting into. They need to be prepared to enter that very uncertain, chaotic world. They need inner strength, and they need knowledge. So how do we do this? I think we need to consider different kinds of pedagogies. And here are just some examples. My friend Macy Maude, who's now at Connecticut College, is a proponent of trauma-informed pedagogy. Our kids are going through a lot of trauma today, from school shootings to alcoholism, drug abuse. You know better than I do. the trauma that these students are going through. Violence in the home, child abuse, all of these kinds of issues. So a trauma-informed pedagogy shifts the brain from fear and panic to making people feel safe, validated, connected, and empowered. There's Angela Costa, who talks about healing-centered pedagogy, which is about healing. There have always been indigenous ways of knowing. There's anti-racist pedagogy that reveals structural inequalities in the US and fosters critical thinking skills as well as critical self-reflection. And there's something that I'll talk about now called contemplative pedagogy. I have a book on this called Sentipensante Pedagogy, Sensing Thinking Pedagogy. Sentipensante is comprised of two Spanish words, sentir, which means to sense, and pensar, which means to think. In this kind of pedagogy, we're working with the mind, but we're also working with intuition, and we're working with feelings. Okay. Typically, we've been socialized to only work with the mind. What I'm saying is that we also need to work with feelings and emotions and intuition. And so, Sentipensante Pedagogy works with tools, contemplative tools, or what I call prácticas de conocimiento, to engage learners more deeply in what they're studying. It's not just about reading the material or memorizing for the test. It's really engaging the students more deeply in what they're learning. So let me give you some examples. The first example is from my friend and colleague, Dr. Norma Cantu. She teaches English at Trinity University in San Antonio. And her tools, her prácticas de conocimiento, she uses photographs or guided imagery, and she has students writing from personal experience. Norma has worked with students who believe they can't write, who feel intimidated by writing, who have been told you are not a good writer. All of this negative stuff has been put into their heads. She knows she has to break that apart. And so what Dr. Cantu does is she has students select a photograph from their childhood and begin to write the story of that photograph. Here's Dr. Cantu talking about how she uses photographs in her class.
I guess the writing, whenever we work with writing, we're really working with spiritual things. And before I even wrote Canicula, I used to have an exercise for my students to remember a photograph of themselves as children and write about it. And I'm teaching description and commas, sentence combining and all this stuff. But I have them do these guided imagery exercises and they write. And one student was writing it, and it gets very emotional because it's about themselves and their families and all that. But I guide them. You know, we start with things that are more innocuous until we get to something that's more personal. And you know, they wrote it and went home. And they take it home. They read it in their small groups. They take it home, revise, edit, and then turn it in for me to grade. And this one student came back, and her eyes were puffy, and she said, "I cried all night." She says, "You have helped me to know my mother." How? I had asked them to write it. She went and the picture she remembered was of her mom and she with her siblings all huddled around her mother. And so she wrote about that picture, and then she started talking to the mother. And so no durmió. She was up working on that paper all night and came back the next morning and told me this and was so grateful. I can't say that I can't take credit and say I did it. I allowed it to happen. And those are the kinds of moments. I mean, this is just one example of how something worked.
So that's an example of what Dr. Cantu has done with her students, and it works very well. The students select the photograph, they write about it, where were they, what were they wearing, what were they thinking about, And then the last question, which I think is very powerful, is what would you tell that little girl today? What would you tell that little boy today? The students write, they're learning to write, but they're engaged much more deeply in the material through the use of this sort of contemplative tool. Here's another example. This is from Professor Candice Kay. She's in early childhood education at Cal State Long Beach. And she's going to talk about two things that she did with her students. She took them to the Museum of Tolerance in LA to examine racism. Students spend the whole day on this site visit where they bear witness to the opposite of caring. And then she had the students engage in what she calls a moon journal. And students begin by looking at a sky where there is no moon. And then they slowly see the moon taking shape, ending with a fully illuminated moon. So students become reflective practitioners and create curricula around the experience of watching the moon. Here's Dr. Kay. Okay, if that doesn't play, let's go on to the next slide. Okay, sorry about that. But, here's another one. The tool here, there's two tools. It's writing poems. Writing poetry is a contemplative tool, but also performing the poem, contemplative performance. I am going to show you a poem recited by a student called Nova Vernable. It comes from the documentary that I really recommend to all of you. It's called Louder Than a Bomb. And it's about the world's largest youth poetry slam. It's held in Chicago. And what Nova writes about was growing up with her father that she used to visit. His father was an addict, and she took care of him and her younger brother who suffered from diabetes. So let's hear Nova reciting Apartment on Austin.
My father grew up in a neighborhood where he got it bad from both sides, black people, white people, just because he was mixed. And as a result, because he grew up fighting, he grew up aggressive. And as a father, he was aggressive. When my parents got divorced, we thought that we didn't have to see him anymore. It turned out that we had to go there 4 out of 7 days of the week.
There are always sirens outside your place. Your condo always seemed to lean to the left. The cement windows rusted like overused water pipes. We lived on the first floor.
What she writes about is hardcore, raw stuff. And when she says it, she gets in that place. So when she's on stage, you're there with her.
Our condo door was tainted white, like a 3-year-old sock washed every week. The walls were the 49ers, and the carpet was rough, like tangled hair. Everything you had no room for piled onto shelf like children.
I fell into the caregiver role. I took care of him. I braided his hair before he went to work. I ironed his clothes. I woke him up before he went to work.
You would always ask me to make your drinks. Measure liquid with the width of my 9-year-old fingers, 4 fingers sangria, 2 gin, 2 tonic, and 1 lemon juice.
I grew older and I said, I can't do this anymore. And so I left.
By the time I was 10, I was your wife, your sister, your mother, your best friend, and you were bitter. I would feed you chicken soup when you were sick, kiss your forehead to see how bad your fever was. But I'm 17 now, and we don't even talk. And sometimes I wish I could tell you how much I miss you. How I want to wrap my arms around your sunken stomach like tissue paper, that I love you. Wish that you were here to be my Papa G again. So you would know that I have a boyfriend that loves me more than you ever used to. But I guess you're too busy rusting like cement windows to notice that your baby girl is a woman. And how my memory will fade like your four-finger sangria, 2 gin, 2 tonic, and 1 lemon juice.
I love that poem. And so you can see that these are children who grow up in low-income communities. And look at how she can write. Look at how she can write. Not only write, but perform the poetry. She's really into that. Here's another project that I love. It's the Cajita project from Professor Alberto Pulido. I've used this project with my own students. During the Day of the Dead, he has students construct a box, a cajita. And in that box, they put artifacts of a person that has passed away, who has made an impact on their lives. But you can use this cajita very creatively for many different kinds of projects. It doesn't have to be Day of the Dead. But here's Dr. Pulido talking about the Cajita project.
So this box here was done by a student named Valerie Barra, and the title you can see on the top sheet. I usually ask students to write like a narrative, which the students here today did a great job in. And it's called My Life as a Mestiza, Valerie Barra. And the little that I know about it, the discussions that we had about it, was that she considers herself part Chicana and part Apache. And so when you look at the imagery in terms of the symbols, you see some of the traditional symbols that you would see in terms of being Mexicana or Chicana and that whole process. But then you see some of the Native American influence. And she did all these kind of different symbols around here. You can see, Christian symbols and Native American symbols. Up on top, which you can't get access to, there's an actual field of agricultural field. There's an eagle that's been carved in. There's a horse. There's some Native American symbols as well. And I think it just captures what the students were talking about in terms of those dualities and living in those multiple worlds.
I use the Cajita project with my students at UTSA. These are students that were working on their master's degrees, and they're going to be student affairs administrators, like working in dormitories, financial aid offices, tutoring centers. And I wanted them to construct the cajita, and the cajita reflect what are the talents that you bring to the student affairs profession? What kind of a student affairs practitioner do you want to be? What is the impact that you're wanting to have on your profession? What kind of relationship building will you have with your students? And students just did a wonderful job with their cajitas. We view them in silence the very last day we meet. And then I ask for volunteers to share their cajitas. I bring my own cajita as well. And I can tell you that by the time that the class is over, there's hardly a dry eye, because we've gotten to know each other in a way that we wouldn't have had it not been for the Cajita project, which, by the way, is now being used nationwide. One last example, and this is bearing witness, having students visit sites of injustice. You can do this online, or you can actually physically go to the site. This photo appeared on my Twitter feed just yesterday. It was posted by Kimberly Garcia. That's room 112 at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. Those students didn't make it. Kimberly posted this photo of room 112 because her daughter, Amory, her birthday would have been May 10th. May 22nd was the shooting. She misses her daughter very, very much. I went to Robb Elementary School last May. It's about an hour and a half from San Antonio. And I bared witness to the tragedy and the grief of the situation. There's lots of politics involved in this, just like there was at Sandy Hook and other places. And parents are hoping for a change. The nation is hoping for a change. So these students are the kinds of students that you're going to be working with. They have hopes. They have dreams. And we want to make sure that nothing like this ever happens in any school again. When I was a teacher in the 70s, I never had to think about school, anybody being shot in school. I never had to think about that. And now we do. So going here and expressing my condolences and experiencing the situation gave me a better sense of the politics and of my own commitment to make sure that this never happens again. So I gave you some examples of these contemplative tools, these prácticas de conocimiento, and there's many that I don't have time to cover. From music, from arts-based projects, to service learning, to digital storytelling, ritual, journaling, periods of silence, having students do documentaries, volunteerism, healing circles, on and on and on. It really depends on your creativity and how you want to work with students in a way that engages them much more deeply in what they're learning. A lot of this is in my book with many more examples, and the second edition of the book is coming out hopefully by fall at the latest. So I want to stop here because I feel I've given you a lot of information to take in. We're going to have time for Q&A. I know I'm meeting with 4 groups. But I also want to thank you for stepping in and standing for students, making sure that they're cared for, making sure that they learn, making sure that they're safe. Thank you for the work that you do, and it's my privilege to be here to share a few things that hopefully can help you as you work with the students and prepare them for the future. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you so much. Thank you.